This is Chapter 11 of What Grows After Goodbye by Alexi Hart. The Monday after the conference, the air in Willow Creek was crisp and smelled of fireplace smoke. Natalie and Michael returned from Atlanta late Sunday night, tired but content. They'd left the buzz of the city behind, along with the fancy hotel and the bright lights, and slipped back into the small-town rhythm of their lives. But something had shifted. Their relationship had deepened in a way that made Natalie feel both exhilarated and vulnerable. They unpacked side by side, laundry mingling in the hamper for what felt like the first time. Michael's blazer hung next to her cardigan on the chair. They carried their coffee mugs to the sink together Monday morning, fingers brushing. Natalie was hyper-aware of the domestic intimacy of it, the way Michael hummed under his breath while loading the dishwasher, the way his hair stuck up at odd angles. She wondered if anyone else could tell that they had crossed a threshold. Darlene certainly suspected. She texted 8 winking emojis along with, "Need details." Natalie responded with a string of heart emojis and a firm, "None of your business." At the bookstore, Gloria greeted Natalie with enthusiasm. "How was Atlanta? Did you eat at Mary Mac's?" she asked as she straightened a display of travel books. "It was great," Natalie said, smiling as she thought of the rooftop dinner and the art museum. "Michael's panel went well. We ate enough pizza to feed a small village." Gloria nodded approvingly. "That's the best trip. I want to hear all about it when you have time. For now, we have an author visit next month. She writes those cozy mysteries with the punny titles. I need you to coordinate with her publicist." She handed Natalie a file. Natalie accepted it, feeling a small thrill. Planning events gave her a sense of purpose. She spent the morning emailing the publicist, ordering extra copies of the author's latest book, and arranging chairs for a reading. She also had to handle a disgruntled customer who insisted the self-help section should be renamed because the books were doing nothing to help them. She listened patiently, offered a refund, and recommended a memoir about resilience. The customer left mollified, and Natalie felt a rush of accomplishment. Meanwhile, Michael immersed himself in co-working space logistics. He met with contractors to finalize renovation timelines, consulted with lawyers about liability insurance, and started brainstorming names for the space. Suggestions ranged from the practical, Willow Hub, to the ridiculous, Worky McWorkface, courtesy of Darlene. Natalie's favorite was the Grove. It invoked the trees that lined their town and felt like a place where things grew. At night, they fell into routines. Some evenings, they cooked dinner at Natalie's, trying new recipes from the cookbook she'd over-ordered. Other nights, they ate at Michael's parents' house, Helen fussing over them with casseroles and Frank telling jokes between bites. They went on walks, exploring trails lined with fiery foliage, and sat on the porch swing, sharing stories about their pasts. Natalie told Michael about the time she dyed her hair red on a whim in college and ended up looking like a traffic cone. Michael confessed he had once been in a breakdancing club for all of 2 weeks before spraining his ankle. One Wednesday evening, as they shared leftover chili and cornbread, Michael's phone buzzed. He frowned when he saw Claire's name flashing on the screen. "I should take this," he said, glancing at Natalie. She nodded, giving him space. He stepped onto the back porch and closed the door behind him. Natalie cleared the table and listened to murmurs through the glass. She didn't want to eavesdrop, but she couldn't help catching snippets. "No, Claire, not interested." "I told you." "Yes, I know the offer is generous. I'm happy here. Please respect that." He returned a few minutes later, cheeks slightly flushed from the cool air. "She wanted to offer me a consulting position with her new venture," he said, sitting down. "Remote, 10 hours a week, ridiculous pay." I said no. Natalie raised an eyebrow. "Because?" "Because I don't want to be tied to that life again," he said firmly. "And because I don't want any more entanglements with Claire. I thought I was clear before, but she's persistent, I need her to understand I'm serious about being here. About us. Relief washed through Natalie. Thank you for telling me. Thank you for choosing here. He reached across the table and took her hand. There's no contest. I chose this the moment I came back. I needed to stop wavering. She can find another techie to throw money at. The subject shifted to lighter topics, yet the conversation lingered in Natalie's mind. She had never thought of herself as jealous, but the idea of someone else tugging at Michael's attention made her stomach flutter with unease. She trusted him, though, and his transparency soothed any insecurity. Nat, she said, in that tone people use when they're about to say something they think is helpful, but is actually hurtful. I hear you and Michael Lawson are seeing each other. Yes, Natalie said calmly, picking up a Honeycrisp and checking for bruises. We are. Mrs. Perkins sniffed. Well, I hope you're thinking of Jacob. Ben, it's awfully soon. It's been 2 years, Natalie said, keeping her voice even. And Jacob supports me. Ben would want me to be happy. Mrs. Perkins looked unconvinced, but she nodded curtly and moved on. Natalie's hands shook slightly as she placed the apples in her basket. She took a breath, reminding herself that other people's opinions did not dictate her life. Later, when she told Darlene about the encounter, her friend slammed her mixing bowl on the counter with a huff. Mrs. Perkins needs to spend less time in other people's business and more time minding her wilted begonias, Darlene said. Let me handle her. No, Natalie said quickly, laughing despite herself. It's okay. She's set in her ways. It reminded me that not everyone understands. You don't need their understanding, Darlene insisted. You need your happiness. Maybe a thicker skin. Also, never trust anyone named Perkins. They always have opinions about your life. Natalie took her words to heart. She practiced letting comments slide off her back. She also talked to Carla, who reassured her that the family supported her. People love to gossip, Carla said over coffee. Let them talk. We know the truth. October blurred into November. Michael's co-working space took shape. Floors were polished, walls painted, windows replaced. He hired a local carpenter to build communal tables from reclaimed wood. Natalie visited often, bringing coffee and scones for the crew, offering suggestions about plant placement and color schemes. She watched with pride as Michael oversaw everything, patient and decisive. At the bookstore, the author visit went off without a hitch. The author, a sprightly woman in her 60s with pink streaks in her hair, delighted the audience with stories about writing mysteries inspired by her cat. Natalie introduced her confidently, organized the Q&A, and sold out of signed books. At the end of the event, Gloria pulled her aside and whispered, "You have a knack for this." Natalie felt something settle inside her then. A sense of competence. She was good at this. She liked it. The fear that had kept her from committing to more hours eased. She embraced her role as assistant manager fully, even buying a pair of comfortable but stylish flats that Darlene dubbed her boss shoes. One evening, after closing the store, Natalie sat at the counter, tapping figures into a calculator. Michael sat across from her, fidgeting with a paperclip. I was thinking, he said, breaking the comfortable silence. I'm going to hire someone to manage day-to-day operations at the Grove once it opens. Natalie looked up. I thought you wanted to be there all the time. I do, he said, but I also want a life outside of it. I want time with my parents, with you. I don't want to get sucked back into workaholic patterns. If I have a manager, I can set boundaries. She smiled, heart swelling at his self-awareness. That's smart. Have you found anyone? Not yet, he said. I was thinking of asking someone who knows the town, who's organized, who is good with people. Maybe someone who has recently accepted more responsibility at their own job and is clearly capable. He gave her a pointed look. She blinked. Are you offering me a job? Maybe, he said, eyes twinkling. Part-time. A few hours a week at first. I'm not trying to poach you from the bookstore, but if you're interested, I'd love your help. You have good taste. You know what our community needs. I trust you. Her breathed. She loved her job, but the idea of being part of Michael's venture, of building something together, was appealing. Let me think about it, she said, smiling. I don't want to overextend myself. Of course, he said, squeezing her hand. No pressure. We can also keep using your design advice for free. Hey, she protested, laughing. The following weekend, they attended Willow Creek's Harvest Parade. Floats decorated with hay bales and corn stalks rolled down Main Street. Children dressed as scarecrows and farm animals tossed candy to spectators. The high school marching band played a slightly off-key, but enthusiastic version of Eye of the Tiger. Natalie and Michael stood with Helen, Frank, and Carla, sipping hot cocoa. Frank wore a hat with ear flaps and insisted on showing everyone pictures of his garden on his phone. As the last float passed, a tractor pulling a wagon filled with pumpkins and a sign that read, "Support our farmers," Michael wrapped his arm around Natalie's shoulders. Life here is weird, he murmured. Weird and wonderful, she replied, leaning into him. He kissed her temple. Agreed. His thumb found the pulse at her throat, like he was keeping time with her. He rested his forehead against hers for a moment, the smallest touch, somehow more intimate than anything else. Later, as they walked back to the car, Helen lagged behind with Carla, whispering and giggling. Michael leaned in. My mother asked me when I'm going to put a ring on your finger, he whispered. Natalie laughed, surprised and charmed. What did you say? I said, Mom, it's been a few months. Calm down. Then she hit me with her purse. She did not, he chuckled. Okay, she only threatened to. But I told her not to worry. We're taking our time. She wants grandkids so badly. I told her to talk to Jacob. Natalie rolled her eyes. He's 19. My uterus is closed for business. Michael laughed so hard he had to stop walking. I love you, he gasped. I love you too, she said, smiling. And we are not discussing grandkids yet. As Thanksgiving approached, Natalie started planning dinner with Darlene. They decided to combine their families. Darlene would bring her famous sweet potato casserole, drenched in pecans and brown sugar. Natalie would handle the turkey. Michael offered to make stuffing. Jacob would bring store-bought rolls he planned to pass off as homemade. Carla volunteered cranberry sauce from a can. There's no shame in a can, she insisted. And Helen promised pumpkin pie and deviled eggs. One evening, as Natalie basted a practice turkey, she wanted to nail timing before the big day. Michael sat at the kitchen table with his laptop, reading an email from the conference. They want me to speak again next year, he said, sounding both pleased and apprehensive. But in Las Vegas. Vegas, she repeated, raising an eyebrow. That's different. Yeah, he said, shrugging. I'm not sure. I don't gamble. The thought of Vegas makes me tired. She peered into the oven, then looked at him. You don't have to decide now. See how this first one turns out. If we do go to Vegas, maybe we can see a show and avoid the casinos. He grinned. I'd go see Celine Dion with you. I'd hold you to that, she teased. They continued to navigate the pace of their relationship, the push and pull between independence and togetherness. They learned each other's rhythms. Michael discovered that Natalie liked to be alone on Sunday mornings, to read and drink coffee slowly. She learned that he needed to tinker with something each week, whether it was a broken lamp or a new app. They discussed everything from favorite holiday traditions to retirement plans. They argued occasionally about whether pineapple belonged on pizza. He said yes, she said absolutely not. About leaving shoes in the entryway. She preferred order, he liked chaos. But they always resolved it, often with laughter or compromise. One night, curled up on the couch, they flipped through channels and landed on a movie about a widow who found love again in an unlikely place. Natalie's breath hitched. She watched the fictional woman struggle with guilt and hope, with judgment and joy. Michael sensed her reaction and pulled her closer. "You're not her," he whispered. "But it's okay to relate. It's okay to feel things." She nodded, tears pricking her eyes. "Sometimes I still feel guilty. For being happy. For loving someone else. I don't think that will ever fully go away." "I know," he said, "and I don't expect it to. I'm here for all of it. The happy, the sad, the guilt, the laughter. All of it." They sat in silence, watching the movie, letting the quiet solidarity bind them. When the credits rolled and the lights dimmed, Natalie felt a peace settle over her. Love wasn't linear. It was layered and messy and complicated. It coexisted with grief and guilt. It required patience and grace. It was worth it. By the time the first snow flurry dusted the ground, barely enough to stick, but still magical, the grove was ready for its soft opening. Michael held a small gathering, inviting friends, family, and a handful of local entrepreneurs. Fairy lights twinkled, coffee brewed from the shiny espresso machine in the corner, and the reclaimed wood tables gleamed under pendant lights. Natalie wore her new comfortable flats and her boss sweater, a burgundy cardigan with deep pockets. She floated around the space, introducing people, refilling coffee, accepting compliments on the decor. "This is amazing," Gloria said, looking around with wide eyes. "I might come here on my days off." "Only if you promise not to alphabetize my bookshelves," Michael teased. Helen cried when she saw her son's name on the plaque near the entrance. The Grove, founded by Michael Lawson, in honor of community. Frank insisted on testing every chair for sturdiness, then declared them acceptable. Carla began planning yoga classes in the conference room. Darlene suggested cocktail workshops. "Mocktails," Natalie corrected. And Ava claimed the quiet corner for homework. As the evening wound down, Michael pulled Natalie into the kitchen area. It was clean and functional, with a row of French presses on a shelf and a chalkboard sign that read, "Brew, Create, Connect." He leaned against the counter, looking around with pride. "Thank you," he said, turning to her, "for believing in this, for being here." She smiled, hugging him. "Thank you for letting me be a part of it." He kissed the top of her head. "We make a good team." "We do," she agreed. "Now let's go home and make leftover turkey sandwiches." He grinned. "The most romantic plan yet."